Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev, and all glories to assembled Vaishnavi devotees. We thank you all for being here today. We are very much blessed. We have His Holiness DAYANANDA SWAMI MAHARAJ, who will be speaking to us from the Srimad Bhagavatam today. Maharaj has been here a couple times and has shared his love and wisdom with us. And today, we're very much fortunate. The last day of the month, we have Maharaj ending the month with us. So Maharaj, we thank you so much for being here. And we may put the verse on the screen and you take it over from here, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So,
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes, so we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8, Text 11 and 12. Purushavaya Verlokaha Sapala Purvakalpitaha Loke Amushyavaya Sapale Iti Shushruma Purusha. Actually, we'll go on to I'll read the translation, then we'll do the word for word on the last one. Translation. O learned Brahman, it was formerly explained that all the planets of the universe with their respective governors are situated in the different parts of the gigantic body of the Virat Purusha. I have also heard that the different planetary systems are supposed to be in the gigantic body of the Virat Purusha. But what is their actual position? Will you please explain that? Text 12. Yavan kalpo vikalpo va yata kalo nimiyate uta bhavya bhavat shabda ayurmanam chayat sataha. Yavan, as it is. Kalpaha, the duration of time between creation and annihilation. Vikalpaha, subsidiary creation and annihilation. Va, either. Yata, as also. Kalaha, the time. Animiyate is measured. Bhuta, past. Bhavya, future. Bhavat, present. Shabdaha, sound. Ayuhu, duration of life. Manam, measurement. Cha, also. Yat, which. Sataha, of all living beings in all planets. Translation. Also, please explain the duration of time between creation and annihilation, and that of other subsidiary creations, as well as the nature of time, indicated by the sound of past, present, and future. Also, please explain the duration and measurement of life of the different living beings known as the demigods, the human beings, etc., in different planets of the universe. Purport. by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Past, present, and future are different features of time to indicate the duration of life of the universe and all its paraphernalia, including the different living beings in different planets. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachadine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastachade Shutadine. So thank you once again for having this opportunity to speak, using service. So, yeah, this is in this particular 2 verses, they're changing in the content of the chapter. Previously, I was talking about the power of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And now it's changed to, because at the beginning of the chapter, well, at the beginning of the 4th chapter of this particular canto, it started talking about creation. And the first 3 chapters of the same canto talk about, the process of devotional service and the process of jnana and the process of karma. And then when Parikshit Maharaj heard that, he became silent and he was meditating. And at that point, he actually surrendered to Shukadeva Goswami and accepted the path of devotional service. So in those first 3 chapters of the 2nd canto, the subject matter of the whole Bhagavatam is actually concisely mentioned. And then he started asking basic questions about creation, because that's the title of the 4th chapter. And I think I mentioned this before last time, that unless we know our position, it's difficult to go forward. So particularly in this day and age, that people are so much impressed by scientific knowledge about the situation of the universe, where we are in the universe, how the universe is functioning, is there life on other planets? It's all about this universe, at least. And so, Bhagavatam starts from that point of explaining things from the Vedic conception of what the universe is. And so this is where we are now, that the basic questions were asked there. And so now there was a little bit of a few chapters in between Purusha Shukta, like that. And now we're back to more questions by Parikshit Maharaj and answers by Shukadeva. It's answers citing the Lord's version, so that it's been the answers are starting to be given to the questions which were asked earlier. And those questions which were asked earlier in the 4th chapter will be also answered again in the 3rd canto. So this subject matter of sthanam, the situation in this material. Well, this is one of the 10 subjects of the Bhagavatam. Sthanam is very important, and it goes all the way, well through the Bhagavatam, keeps re-emphasizing the situation. Yes, so in this 8th chapter, there are further questions, and then the next is, I believe it's answers citing the Lord's version, and then at the end it says Bhagavatam is the answer. So then, in the 3rd canto, it starts by giving all the answers. The Bhagavatam opens up in the 3rd canto. But here we're talking about the planetary systems. So like we said before we can go forward, we need to know what our situation is in this world. Like Sanatana SWAMI says, Ki ami? Who am I? Why am I here? What's my duty? And so this is a similar tact as that, similar way forward. And first thing is that, you know, people who, this Virat Purusha is talking about, it's also sometimes called the Jagat Purusha as well. It's actually an imaginary form of the Lord. You know, it's not actually existing as a personality, but it's actually acting all the same. I remember once I was, before I joined the movement, I was coming home with one of my friends one evening, and he looked up at the sky, he said, we're in the body of a big person. And at that time, you know, I could understand his point that, you know, the solar system is like a small atom, according to the old system. And many of these added together make up some, you know, element, and the elements make up something bigger. And I could understand that actually this is this seems to be the proper way to try and understand things. And so, you know, in the material world, everybody's thinking that way. And so Krishna is very intelligent that he speaks about a universal form, and that immediately people's interest is actually awakened. But we should know that that universal form is, we've seen that picture in the old Bhagavad Gita of the man running, and the sun is one of his eyes and the moon is another one of his eyes. So that's not actually a fact. We can't see that, but actually the sun and the moon and the different planets have various activities in order to create the life and different activities within this universe. So in that way, you know, the sun is the eyes of the Lord. And how do we know? How can we see that? That it's explained in Bhagavatam that without the sun we cannot see. So out of all the elements, the fire element is the sun, and it explains how the demigods create the different organs of this body from the particular planetary system. That particular demigod is in charge of the ability to see. And so from the ability to see, then the demigod in charge of the sun, he creates the eyes by which to see and the light by which to see. So it's like that. The materials are supplied by the Supreme Lord, and the demigod uses them in a certain way and supplies the ability to that particular function for that particular organ. And this is explained, I can't remember what chapter, I think it's in the third canto. And it goes through all the different elements, right from ether right through to earth, and how the different parts of the body are formed. So in that way, you know, the universal form of the Lord is creating the present forms that we have and the ability to use them. And that Virat Rupa or Virat Purusha, it's coming from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. It's his expansion. So Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he decides he wants to see, and then the demigod in charge of the planet arranges that the ability to see is given to the living entities within this particular universe like that. And he decides to hear. So then Vayu creates the air by which sound is transmitted, and the ability, and then the function of the ear and the organ of the ear, so that we can hear like that. So it's all coming from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who's creating all the elements in the universe. And then Lord Brahma is given the ability to empower the demigods to create on the Lord's behalf, but the Lord's He's supplying the desire. Unless he desires, nothing will happen. And then he's supplying the abilities through Lord Brahma and empowering the demigods. So, we're talking about the planetary systems and the different positions in this world. So actually, it's not really so relevant. It's relevant to somebody who wants to understand things from the point of view of the material world. But from the point of view of a devotee, it's interesting, but it's not essential, because actually everything is spiritual. We talk about the spiritual energy, and we talk about the material energy. And there are so many energies, actually. Natasha karam charanam chabhijitena, natat samaschabjarikascha ristite, varasya shakti vividaiva surate. This is the many energies of Lord are multifold, not just two, but they're subdivided into so many energies. Parasya Shakti Vivadaiva Surate, Svabhika Jnana Balakirich, and they're all acting independently, they're empowered. We should understand it's all coming from the original energy of Krishna. And it's actually empowered in a certain way to have a particular function. Or in the case of the material world, it's covered in a certain way. So when we talk about the planetary systems and the living entities, all it is really is a different covering of the living entity. The inert particles of atoms, or so-called atoms, the inert things in this material world, like the planets, they're made up of living entities who are so covered that actually they actually form stone, dirt, so many other things. So in that way, and all these energies are actually interchangeable by Krishna's will. So if we understand this principle that, the planets are not separate from the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's completely controlling everything in whatever way he wants, and he can change things around to make a thing spiritual or manifested spiritual and unmanifested spiritual, like that. So when we see from that platform, it actually answers all the questions, but people are maybe not ready for that. They have to be gradually brought to the platform of having the faith to understand that, first of all, Krishna is the source of everything. Aham sarvasya prabhavo, atar sarvam prabhatati, iti mat bhava jantivam buddha bhava samamvitaha. And when we say everything is spiritual, how can we say that? Well, Krishna says he's the source of both spiritual and material worlds. So it seems like there's a difference. But he says, Nityo Nichinanam Chetasas Chetanam. He's a supreme eternal upon all eternity. It's a supreme conscious living entity amongst all conscious living entities. Like that. And finally, Ampurnamidapurnamidam, that, Krishna's described as being, he's not material in any way. So it means that everything that emanates from him is also completely spiritual. Ampurnam says that whatever is produced of the complete, all is also complete in itself. And even so many complete units emanate from him, it still remains a complete balance. And even though these emanations seem to be material, they're actually spiritual. So I just thought I'd make that point, that it tends to give us a clearer understanding of a simple understanding of the whole situation. And when it talks about the living entity in this material world, what is his position? I think that's mentioned in the report. Let's have a look. Oh, I've got it here anyway, just a minute. The living beings on different planets. There's one question asked in this part of the Bhagavatam about what Maharaj Pariksit asked Shukadeva Goswami. How was the living entity who is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, come to understand that it's part of this material world? And Shukadeva Goswami says he's not part of this material world. He says that's the illusion. It's like the moon reflected on water. You know, the moon appears to be in the water and it appears to be on the earth, but it's just a reflection. It's just similarly due to the living entity's consciousness. His consciousness is reflected into this material world, and therefore he's, you know, acting on a platform of being the body, but he's nothing to do with it. He's not attached to the body. He's no connection with the body, but it's just through his misunderstanding, that's all. He says, so the living entity is not a part of this material world. So now it starts to open up a little bit of broader understanding of this material world. It's actually all spiritual, and the living entity has nothing to do with the, you know, so-called interactions of this material world or this body. Simply that it mentions in the Bhagavatam that Prabhupada says it's like one corner of the spiritual world is covered by a curtain of Yogamaya. So just like one corner of this particular planet may be covered by some clouds, that means that the sun can't be seen. But it doesn't mean to say that, you know, the reality of the sun's not there. So similarly, this material world is actually covered by the energy of the Supreme Lord, that is Maya potency. And that Maya potency is like the beginning of material life. There's two things. There's the, what do you call it? There's the executive cause. This is pradhan, the material elements, the subtle form of material elements. That gives a gross production of the Mahatattva and all the elements. But what they call the effective cause or the original cause is Maya, under the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, creating this illusion by which, you know, everybody starts to relate to things in this material world, and then pradhan produces material bodies and all the elements we need to use in this material world. So this is a general understanding of what the actual situation is. And so each planet has its particular function it's controlled by a demigod, and they're actually, by the potency of the Supreme Lord, they're organize everything in this material world. So yeah, so it's important to understand this. When we philosophically understand something or logically understand things, then we become confident. So this is why we're dealing on this material platform. We're starting off on this material platform with the material energy. And then when we have, you know, a philosophical understanding, we have some knowledge, then, you know, we actually become more detached. And as we become more detached, we're given the process of devotional service, we start to practice with confidence. Lord Chaitanya said, well, actually, Bhakti Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, Vairagya Vijanija Bhakti Yoga, Shikshatam Esha Purusha Parana, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradari, Tripambudir Yastvam Aham Prapadye. You know, Lord Chaitanya is non-different from Krishna, and he's appeared in this world to deliver real knowledge, Bhakti Yoga, Nija Bhakti Yoga, the devotional service of the Lord, and Vairagya, renunciation from all things that take one away from devotional service. So this is part of that formula. First, knowledge, and then Vairagya will develop, and then Bhakti will increase. Where to go from here? Yes, so this is called indirect process of knowledge. It's not specifically speaking about devotional service itself. When we speak about the 9 processes of devotional service and their application, and we speak about Krishna's pastimes, that's direct process of approaching Krishna. But when we speak about this material world and things which seem to be not connected with the spiritual world, then this is called indirect. But Prabhupada explains that both are actually needed. We need to have an indirect understanding in order to have confidence to have a direct understanding. I hope that makes sense. It has to be logical enough for us to actually, first of all, start to understand it. And then we can start to accept things which are beyond our ability. Yes, so knowledge of our situation in this world. Yeah, in the seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, the last verse explains this point. How does it go? I can't remember now. But it says that understanding the situation, that, Krishna's everywhere, he's inside everything, he's outside everything, that he was here before creation, he's after creation, he's here now. And if we don't see that Krishna's in every situation, then this is the illusory energy. He says, therefore, we should, in all time and place, both directly and indirectly, we should search after the absolute truth. So this is what it means, directly and indirectly. So this is what we're doing now in Bhagavatam. We're searching indirectly. And, actually all the way through Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a lot of indirect information. I don't know whether you've noticed. And in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains Uddhava went to Krishna before he was about to leave this world, and he asked him to take him with him. And Krishna says, no, you stay here. I have some unfinished work that you can complete because you're just as good as my own self. He said, I'm going to go to Badika Ashram and teach them what I've taught you. And then this subject of Bhakti Yoga can be preached all over the world. And, Uddhava was a sannyasi, he took sannyas. And so Uddhava was thinking, what Lord Krishna's told me and the way I explain it and where the sages understand it, the modern people won't be able, the people in general won't be able to understand this. And when he said that to Lord Krishna started to speak the Uddhava Gita. He started to speak, first of all, about the Avadut Brahman. And he started to speak about how he had 24 gurus. And by these gurus, all these gurus are part of this material world. It's the indirect process. And by analyzing all these different gurus, or all these different living entities and planetary systems and elements, these were all his gurus, he actually learned something which helped him in his spiritual progress. So Lord Krishna told that story to Uddhava so that he'd have, information of how to preach to the people in general. So this was practiced even 5,000 years ago, the same process which has been practiced now. And this is the process that Krishna likes. It mentions in the 11th canto that Krishna likes this indirect process. And, sometimes it's difficult to understand why, but when you think about it, when you try to tell a person directly, and it's all philosophical, it's very difficult for them to understand, unless they're actually really a philosophical person. And even if they are philosophical, it's still difficult for them to understand. I'll give you an example. In the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, there was, what was it now? That's it. Daksha, he started to produce 10,000 sons, called the Haryashvas. And probably you all well heard the story how, Narada Muni, he preached to all the Haryashvas to actually take sannyas and to practice bhakti yoga. And, Daksha, he wanted them to actually perform austerities so they could produce, living entities in a pure state in the material world, all the different. And, Daksha was really upset. And so Brahma, he actually calmed him down and said, listen, just do it again and, be careful this time. And so then he produced 1,000 sons called the Savalashvas. And once again, Narada Muni, he actually explained, don't listen to Narada Muni. He gave him a good briefing. And so Narada Muni, he met them, and he didn't preach the way he preached to the Haryashvas. And he was very intelligent. He said that you're all the younger sons of the Haryashvas, right? Yes, that's correct. He said the younger sons follow the direction of the older sons. Is that right? Yes, that's right. And so, after a little bit of persuasion, they also thought it was the best thing was to follow in the footsteps of the Haryashvas. But when, Daksha, when he heard that it was too much, he almost fainted. And when he met Narada Muni, he really criticized him. And but the point is, the point I'm trying to make here, that's a little bit of the story, is that when Narada Muni preached to these Haryashvas and Savalashvas, at this particular part, I think it's the 4th or the 5th. It's the 5th or 6th chapter of the 6th canto, and he's talking about there's a Bila. He doesn't start preaching to them direct. These are purified souls. They're very intelligent, and he could have just preached them directly. But he didn't. He started preaching with allegories. He says there's a Bila in this firmament. A Bila means a hole. He says out of which anybody who's seen to enter into that hole have hardly ever seen to come back. And so that was his first allegory. And then he said there's a river which flows 2 ways. He says, and anybody who tries to actually swim in that river, they can't get out because the banks, the current on the bank of the river is actually stronger than in the middle. It's like a whirlwind, in other words, it's flowing that way and it's flowing that way. And then he said, then there's another one, there's a mechanical machine which is rotating razor blades, and it's actually destroying everything in its path. And I can't remember if there were any more allegories. Oh yeah, there's the swan who has the discrimination of right and wrong. And finally, I think he said that there's a prostitute. There's a prostitute and a man in a certain part of this world, the way that you are going, in other words, following the path of Daksha. And so that's all he said. And these are Hariashvas, they were so intelligent, they immediately understood what he was talking about. The Bila he was mentioning was that going into the lower planets, when one enters into the lower planets, it's very difficult to come back, especially when he mentioned Patala Loka. He says, so one should be careful not to perform activities which are actually detrimental and which degrade one. Then he talks about the swan. So this swan is referring to a saintly person. You know, swans have the ability to sift out milk from water. They have the ability to discriminate. He says, so this swan can discriminate between right and wrong actions. So this is a spiritual master. One should actually take shelter of the swan. Then the next one, what was that? Can anybody remember? We were talking about the rotating blades. He says this is time. Time is actually cutting down everything, the duration of life. So why should we waste time in this material world? You know, everything we're actually aspiring to enjoy is going to be taken away. And then he talked about the prostitute and the man. He said, what's the prostitute? The prostitute is our intelligence, our fickle intelligence, our wavering intelligence. He said, if a man's married to a prostitute, then his life will be a misery. He says, similarly, if we are married to, if we actually are listening to this intelligence, this material intelligence, then our life will be actually degraded and be a misery. And the Hariashvas, he could understand straight away. So I was thinking, why did he speak to the Hariashvas like that? If they're so intelligent, why didn't he just tell them? And I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, you know, you're not going to forget examples like that so easily. So when we give examples which are based on our material experiences, it helps us to remember the philosophy, and especially if they're actually examples like that. So it simultaneously delivers the philosophy in a novel way, which we can remember it, but it delivers it in a powerful way. It actually really exemplifies the difficult situation. And so it gives power to the Shastra to do it that way. If we just explain something as it is, sometimes we read Bhagavatam or we read Krishna book, and you know, there's something really amazing. And after we've been reading it for a while, we just accept it as if this is a daily activity. We don't realize how amazing the things that we're reading. And so, you know, in that way, if we're just dealing and giving direct knowledge all the time without some story behind it, it doesn't have the same impact. So I haven't said too much about the planetary systems, and but I've given a general idea of this material world and how we can, you know, see it in a beneficial way, and how we can relate to it in such a way that we become Krishna conscious. And that's really what it's here for. It's here to frustrate us. You know, if we become the best scientists, we understand so many different situations, so many planets, and so many elements on those planets. It's all useless. But if we understand its relationship with Krishna, then it has meaning. Let's just go a little bit further. Oh, this river, I forgot about the river. Remember the river? River flows both ways. That's called creation and annihilation. This river is flowing from the beginning of creation to the end of annihilation, like a river. And if somebody's in the middle of the river and is in a strong whirlpool, the water's flowing both ways, he can't get out. That's the point he was making. So one thing that struck me actually is that, Krishna cares so much for the living entities. He's actually analyzing all these things and delivering the process of devotional service so carefully that it makes it very easy for those who are a little serious to take up the process and move forward. So, in the seventh canto, it explains that there's a question asked by Parikshit Maharaj about Krishna, is he partial to anybody? And the answer given is that he's not partial to anybody. He cares about everybody, but he's dealing with everybody in a different way according to their particular conditioning. So, Krishna has an amazing ability to understand everybody's heart, everybody in creation, and deal in a particular way with that individual in such a way that they can actually start to make progress in spiritual life. Okay. And just one last thing, actually. I was reading the sixth canto last few weeks, and it talks about how Daksha creates all the demigods by, first he creates the Haryashvas, Savalashvas. That fails, and he creates 60 Matajis because he knows the Matajis, they don't take renunciation. So he very intelligently creates Matajis, and they get married to various sages in the universe, and they produce all the different demigods in charge of the different planetary systems. And so as I was reading through them, I could recognize the different names of the different planets of those particular demigods. So, that's the way a devotee can see, and that's the way a devotee can explain. It's not necessarily, this planet is further away from the sun and this one's, made of a certain material and this one's made of gas. And because that's what interests the people in the material world. But a devotee sees them as, representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And actually, these planets, they're the witness of all the activities that we perform, especially the sun and moon. When we think that there's nobody witnessing our activities, they're being witnessed by so many living entities, in particular the demigods. And the demigods are taking note and, creating a horoscope for us. So when we in astrology, that's how it's related to astrology, that the demigods take note of our activities, and then it's recorded, and then our future is actually decided upon. So I just thought I'd add that little bit extra. Okay, we can stop there a little bit early, but this is not an easy subject matter, the planetary systems. And has anybody got any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Like you rightly said, this is not an easy subject matter. The creation is very complicated, but thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, realizations, please, you may unmute and go ahead to speak, please. Maharaj, excuse me. See, I asked this question some time ago that sometimes it's not so easy to attempt to explain our teachings to non-devotees, that whatever you read or you hear from the scriptures are true, are real. But most people consider lots of what is said in the scriptures to be myth. And one question is, we talk about Lord Brahma being the secondary creator. Lord Brahma created the universe and had to populate Lord Brahma created whatever is within the universe, and he was asked to populate. Now he himself gave birth to the four Kumaras. And then he asks the four Kumaras to enter into Grihastha life to populate the world. Where were the people that he had created that he's asking the four Kumaras to marry to fill the world? It's just like a statement said in the Bible where nobody, I wouldn't say nobody, but I haven't met anybody who's been able to explain how Cain and Abel are the only two brothers, and then one killed the other one, and then the other one goes somewhere, finds a wife, marries her, and they started living a life. So my question is, how do we attempt to explain to non-devotees that what is said in the scriptures are not myth, they are real events, when it's so difficult to explain?
Well, if they accept, if they have enough faith to listen to you, that's the first thing. If they don't, then you're wasting your time. But if they're keen to actually try and understand, then and accept that, okay, Brahma is the first created living being, and that he's born from the body of the Lord, and then from Brahma he creates so many living entities, he creates so many Prajapatis from himself. He's got that ability, and one of the first ones is Swayambhuva Manu. So Swayambhuva Manu, from his own body comes Satarupa, his wife. So this is like the Bible where Adam, and Eve. And then from the combination of Satarupa and Swayambhuva Manu, there are other living entities, and then they all interact or interrelate to produce other progeny. So we can explain that if they accept the
Well, Hare Krishna, it seems there is a bit of technical issue here from Maharaj's end. We're going to try working on it to see.
Is not under the laws that we see.
Hmm. Let me see. It seems we lost Maharaj, but he should be back. We'll see. All right, Maharaj is connecting. Yes, Maharaj, please, you may unmute.
Yes, so that's the first thing. It depends who they are, what their level is. And if they'd accept it as a personal God, we can explain like that. He's omniscient, omnipotent. We can go into a little bit more detail, about that. He's empowering others with his potential to actually produce living entities from their own body, like that. And if they're not personalists, then you have to really think about that one.
I got you, Maharaj. Yes.
Because it's completely different, everything's coming from matter.
Yeah.
I've just been reading the Chaitamrita, and it talks about the 14 subject matters of Chaitanya Chaitamrita, and there's 2 verses on Advaita Acharya, and it goes into a lot of detail about how the Lord is how the creation is coming from life, comes from life, and it's destroying Shankaracharya's proposition that it's coming from material elements. So then we have to apply that if we're dealing with impersonalists. And basically what Shankaracharya is saying is that water doesn't need anything. Water runs. It doesn't need anything else to make it run. It doesn't need a person. Trees grow and they produce fruits. It doesn't need a person to do that. But then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he starts to take that to pieces, and he starts to explain how matter cannot, inert matter cannot produce life. He said it needs thinking, feeling, and willing to actually for something to happen. This is Bhagavad Gita. First, we have to decide, we have to think about something, we have to meditate on it and desire to do it. He says, so dual matter doesn't do that. It's not. So anything that's happening is coming from thinking, feeling, and willing. It's coming from that personal what do you call it? Progression. So then you have to do some homework, but then it's going to be difficult for them to accept, because at the end of the day we can't prove the existence of the soul beyond the Shastra. We have to accept the words of Shastra. So at some point they have to accept the Vaishnava Shastras. Well, that's important.
Hare Krishna.
Sanskrit gives a chance.
Well, Hare Krishna Maharaj, seems we're having a little bit of
Life comes from life. This is a book which by Prabhupada's disciples. It's talking about different arguments. But when this is one of the first things that we start talking about. If the person so, you know, your origin must have personality. And, you know, you can go along those lines. And then the next question is, which is superior, impersonality or personality?
Well, thank you, Maharaja, for the answer. There were a couple times we lost you, so we did not get
Yeah, we're very fortunate actually. The internet here is like on and off all the time. So
it's on and off. Okay.
we've done.
Okay. Well, thank you. Anadi Nidanam Prabhu, please, you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj, Madanda was pronounced.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So, Maharaj, in the course of your lecture, you made mention of how Narada Muni made the sons of Darshan to take sannyas. So, my question is, in a situation whereby actually one's parent and one's guru, they are all worshipable. So, in a situation whereby one's parent wants him to enter into family life, and the guru on the other side said the disciple should become a sannyas, or for that matter, should renounce. How do we marry these two? What can you say to that? Since the two are worshipable, what do such a person do in such a situation? Hare Krishna.
So what you're saying is that Daksha on one side, he wanted to produce offspring to populate the universe. That was the father's order. But Narada Muni, sannyasi, said that don't waste your time doing that. You know, better that you actually strive for self-realization. So are you saying who's correct? Is that the question?
Yeah, the question is what should the children do? Because both the parent, both the father and the spiritual master are worshipable. They have to listen to both. Now they are given counter instructions. So what do they do?
Well, one instruction that the son doesn't have to follow is he doesn't have to get married. He can refuse to get married. It's like the four Kumaras refused. And so, you know, the priority is the whole reason to produce children is to help them to become God conscious and return back to Godhead. So if somebody is qualified to do that, he should immediately take up the post and do that and forget about everything else. There'll be plenty of people who won't want to actually be so serious about self-realization.
Hare Krishna. Anadi Nidanam Prabhu, did you get the answer?
Actually, it wasn't clear. So,
Maharaj was saying that of all the rules and the regulations, it is said that one may refuse an order from the parent or the guru to enter into marriage life. So in other words, Daksha's children who took to renounce the life on the advice of Narada Muni did that because they themselves were convinced they wanted to do it. Otherwise, they could have said no, and there wouldn't have been Guru Aparat.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, if they take to spiritual life and become advanced, then they can save so many people.
Yeah.
And also, they can save Daksha.
Mm.
You know, because they're pure devotees, Daksha is going to get the benefit.
Mm.
I'll tell you a story I heard today, actually. There was one Because in India, Indians are very attached to their children. They're very family orientated. And the only son decided to join the brahmachari ashram. And he had a really good job. He'd been to university, he'd got, and the parents were really satisfied. But then he became determined to actually practice brahmachari life. And so the guru of that ashram, the parents and the uncle came to see the guru of the ashram, and they were really, the mother was crying, and the father was angry, and the uncle was beside himself with anger, and they were saying, "Why have you?" He gave so many arguments, and the guru said, "Well, he said, I didn't ask him to come and join the ashram; it's his choice." and so eventually, anyway, they went away, and a little later on, the uncle, who was really against it, he got cancer. And so, as he became more and more advanced, his nephew, who had actually joined the brahmachari ashram, he went to see him every day in hospital and preached to him. And by the time he came to, just before he left his body, he was actually in bliss. He was chanting the Maha mantra, and he was so grateful to his nephew that he actually took that line. He says, "No, people come to see me, I'm in this condition, and they say, 'How are you?' And they can't help me at all." He says, "But you're coming and giving me the greatest benefit." So that's that's a broader perspective on the situation.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but if I may ask a follow-up question, so why is it that generally women are not allowed to practice celibacy? Because in our this thing, Sampradaya is like, we all know for sure that we are not this body, we are spirit souls. So why is it that generally women are not allowed to practice celibacy? Because when Dasha fell on the side of the sons, he has to create the women and then end up marrying to the sages. So why is it that women are not allowed to practice celibacy? Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, did you get his question?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I couldn't hear what it went off.
Sorry, his question is, why is it that generally women are not allowed to take sannyas? It's only the men, when we know that both men and women are all living entities. They are all souls. But men are allowed to take sannyas. Women are not allowed to take sannyasi. That's his question.
Because a woman has a different psychophysical makeup than a man. A man is specifically meant for self-realization more than a woman even, and also to protect. Whereas a woman is meant to be protected, and it's usually not. Women are not generally so spiritually advanced. So what happens is that if a woman takes sannyas, she'll be exploited by men. And, a discrimination of a woman is not the same as a discrimination of a man. So, Shastra tells us that the woman needs to be protected. She can't be alone at any point, protected by the son, or protected by the father in her life, and by the husband when she marries, and then by the eldest son when the father leaves and takes sannyas. So, that's the best situation for her. At least she's protected, and if she's under the care of a devotee husband and devotee family, then that's the best. Because if you just if she's chaste to the husband, then she'll get all the benefits that husband has accrued.
Well, Maharaj, thank you for the answer, but I'm not sure but I'm thinking that the question in itself is wrong in the sense that there is nowhere where it is mentioned that women are not allowed to take sannyas. What I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I know is that women are not very much encouraged. Not being encouraged is not the same as not being allowed, because in the scriptures, there are few instances where some women, not technically called sannyasis, but they lived like sannyasis. And the same scriptures, they have like a feminine form of sannyasi, which they call it sannyasins. Like they have Goswami and they have Goswaminis. So there are historical events like that, but generally it is not encouraged. I don't know if this perception I have is correct, Maharaj.
So, you know, it's specific categorically stated that women should never be on their own.
Yeah, Maharaj told us his internet connection is kind of poor today. So we're living through that today. His connection is kind of weak, but we hope he will be able to get connected and share his wisdom with us.
Well, Saudi Prabhu,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
but before we get him back, I would be glad if you could get me the reference to what we just said.
Okay.
Because generally, that's what I've heard from seniors, and I read it in some places also. So I'll be glad if you can send me the references, maybe on the Hare Krishna Pita platform also, so that at least we can also cross-check for future. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I will be glad.
Yeah,
Hare Krishna.
we'll try to do that. Let's see if Maharaj is still here. Maharaj is still here. Maharaj, you are muted.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe one thing we may try, Maharaj, is probably you turn off your camera and you just turn on the microphone so you may speak so we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so
Good. We can hear you, Maharaj.
so what happens now? Was there another question asked or?
No, I was trying to say that I do not think that it is categorically stated that women are not allowed, the word allowed, but I was saying that it is rather said that they are not encouraged to take sannyas, which is different from not allowed.
Well, I can't say any more, but you know, it does say that they should never be independent, and a sannyas is independent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Madhuvan Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. All glories unto your lotus feet. All glories unto the lotus feet of all the Vaishnava assembled. This topic of either women goes into renunciation. And if you look at the Catholic order, we have women who become Reverend Sister. And I believe this also renounced order of life. And particularly, I have a cousin whom just on her own decided to be a Reverend Mother, even to the extent that her senior brother was so much against the idea, and he was fond of ridiculing her. How can you just decide that you are not going to get married? And the prayer was so much. But after some time, this brother, he died when he contacted age. So as I'm speaking now, this Reverend Sister, there was a time she was celebrating her 50th birthday. So as a family, we were invited to the monastery. And that day, I could see how they were so happy within themselves. And she was very happy about what she's doing. And I realized that, she was completely detached. And then she doesn't have this usual material commitment, doesn't have to bother about house rent, doesn't have to bother about transportation, doesn't have to bother anything material. She was just happy, being a Reverend Sister. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah, Madhavan Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if Maharaj has something to share on what Madhavan Prabhu just said.
It was very difficult for me to hear, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, Maharaj, he was talking about a family member of his, a lady who decided to take like more or less like a sannyas life, which is in the Christendom, like a woman becoming a nun, and the family were opposed to it, but he's just trying to share an experience he had that, though not Vedic, but it did happen in his own home, where a female family member decided to become a nun, which is similar to a sannyasi.
Yeah.
I just did some reference, and I saw something that Srila Prabhupada said, and maybe later on we may do a little bit more research, but if I may put it up here, is Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me put it up here on the screen. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, Text 40. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that a woman is not supposed to take sannyas. So-called spiritual societies concocted in modern times give sannyas even to women, although there is no sanction in the Vedic literature for a woman's accepting sannyas. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is saying. But I humbly stand by what I said earlier that I had read, where some women were addressed as Goswaminis. that means they were, and sannyasin. Now, sannyasa, S-A is male, sannyasin is female, but we're yet to see whether it is from a bona fide sampradaya or from some unbona fide sampradaya. But for now, this is what I have come across, just to affirm to what Maharaj you're saying, that a woman should not take sannyas. So Anadinidanam, like you said, we'll look more into it. It's a very nice question you asked, and if we find something else, we'll share. But at the moment, this is what Maharaj is saying. This is what I also found to affirm to what Maharaj was saying. Govinda Prabhu, you have something to say, please. You may go ahead and speak.
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, that
And Maharaj, Maharaj, my question is about devotees going through so-called suffering in the material sense. It is said that devotees are under the protection of the divine energy of the Lord. But yet, we can see that the misery that the non-devotees go through is the same misery that the devotees also go through. But yet we say we are under the divine energy of the Lord. That is the question number one. How do we explain that? The question number two is about how a devotee should project his mind when he's going through such difficulties, knowing that he's under the protection of the Lord. The example is the example of Haridas Thakur. When he was being beaten, he was actually beaten in 24 marketplaces. And he was not dying. And the people were at a point begging him to die. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed how he received all the beatings given to Haridas Thakur. Even though Haridas Thakur was being beaten, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was receiving the beatings. Externally, it sounds like Haridas was being beaten, but internally, that beating was going to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And another instance is Mother Sita. Mother Sita was taken by Ravana. But later on, was said that the Sita that was taken by Ravana was not actually the real Sita, was illusory Sita. So it means the original Sita was not touched. How do we relate that? If a devotee is going through suffering, how do we project our mind and to realize that all those suffering, even it externally will seem like we are suffering or we're going through difficulties in life, but internally, Krishna is actually absorbing all that kind of so-called miserable conditions.
Okay, so first question is why do we seem to suffer like an ordinary materialistic person
When we are under the divine energy of the Lord.
when we're supposed to be protected by him? So purification means that we have to go through certain situations in order to actually see where we're at and what we need to do. And the protection is not necessarily the body, the protection is the soul. He's protecting the soul. And so it says a devotee may appear to suffer like an ordinary person, but they don't. The examples given of an orphan. An ordinary orphan suffers and he's got nobody to turn to. But a devotee may appear to be an orphan, but he's always got Krishna there. Krishna's actually interacting and is personally taking care of the devotee, and he's just administering what suffering may be there in order for the devotee to become completely surrendered and free from material attachments. So a devotee always sees any suffering as the mercy of the Lord, and it's there to help me actually. And he sees anything, well, that's the first thing. So, tate nu kampam susamikshmano bunjana evatma ritam vipakam vidvar lapurbe bidadam namaste jiveta yo muktipade sa dayabai. So this means that a devotee, when he's going through suffering, he doesn't blame Krishna, but he actually carries on offering his respectful obeisance to Krishna and carries on serving Krishna with a positive attitude. And it says if he maintains that equilibrium, then he has the right to go back to Godhead. He becomes his rightful claim. Because to do that, we have to actually appreciate what is actually happening. Is that, Bhaktaram Yogi-tapasam is Suridam Sarvabhutanam. Krishna is a well-wishing friend. And, part of our progress is to actually understand that. And because the tendency is to sometimes see maybe in this situation, it doesn't appear that he's my friend. So, by going through these trials and tribulations and coming out of the other end, we see that actually Krishna is our friend and he's relieved us from so much material attachment, and we become actually grateful. So we have to at least, have that philosophical understanding, that faith. And, through these trials and tribulations, we maintain the association of devotees who have faith to help us through it. And that's the first thing. And the second one is that, Krishna, he actually declares in Bhagavad Gita, Shipram Bharvari, Dharmacha, Shantim Nigachati, Kontiya Pradigajani, Name Bhakti Pranashami, that my devotee never perishes. He's always protecting him. Even if he commits the most sinful activities, if he remains faithful, he's protected. So the second part is that he may not actually, it's not that Krishna's taking all in the case of Haridasa Kaur, that happened. But if a devotee is suffering, it's not that Krishna's taking the suffering on behalf of the devotee. The devotee may have to go through some suffering. For many reasons. For a neophyte devotee, it's to actually help him to become purified. For an advanced devotee who's already achieved success, it may be to actually set an example for others. But Krishna's never doing anything to harm his devotee. It's only for his betterment. I don't know whether I can say more than that initially anyway.
Well, Hare Krishna, thank you, Maharaj. Govinda Prabhu, I don't know if you have
Yeah.
something to say.
Yeah. So Maharaj, thank you very much. But how do we maintain that consciousness that if we are going through any so-called suffering, how do we maintain our Krishna consciousness
Well,
and see that as a purification that is presented to us for our purification?
well, we have to be faithful. We have to have a knowledge of what's happening. Bhagavad Gita is giving us an understanding of what's actually happening. So if we know Bhagavad Gita, philosophically we can understand. But we also will need the association of devotees to support us and encourage us. So we should reveal our mind and help them to, philosophically help us, and also to give, both physical and psychological support. So, the association of devotees is so important in that situation. They can help us through so many difficult situations. So that's the vital thing, is that we get good association. And, we read Prabhupada's books every day. In the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about that, the first thing is that first stage is that a person thinks he's the doer. And the second stage is he thinks that the modes of nature are the doers, that, is being controlled by the modes of nature. And the next stage is that he realizes that actually Krishna's in charge of the modes of nature, so he's actually at fault. And then going a little bit further, he actually understands that Krishna's just fulfilling desires. So he's actually just fulfilling desires. And so when the devotee really wants to actually make progress, Krishna will not necessarily put him through any suffering, but that might be part of the process to help him quickly come to full Krishna consciousness. Because let's face it, unless we put under pressure, it's very difficult for us to pressurize ourselves. We tend to take it easy,
Well, Maharaj, we may recall the second part of the question His Grace Govinda Prabhu asked, and that is, he was making the references of Namacharya Haridas Thakur, who was beaten, I think, in the 21 or so marketplaces. And at the end of the day, all the lashes that were given to him, Lord Chaitanya had all the wealth on his own personal self back, not on the back of Haridas Thakur. So that means that even though Haridas Thakur was being punished like that, but he himself never felt the pain because Lord Chaitanya absorbed all the pain. Then he gave another example of how Sita was supposedly captured by Ravana, but it also turned out that that Sita was an illusory Sita. The actual Sita was never touched by Ravana. So the understanding is that pure devotees of the Lord, even though externally we may see them go through pain and suffering, but actually they do not feel the pain. Krishna absorbs the pain. Govinda Prabhu, I believe that is what you were saying.
Yeah.
Maharaj,
That was a question, and I wanted to know the spiritual aspect of the suffering. because physically appears to be suffering, but internally the Lord is doing his own thing to his devotees.
Yeah.
That is where I wanted the Maharaj to straight that balance for us.
Okay.
Yeah, the devotee may feel pain. It's not that they won't feel pain, but also, you know, if the devotee is fully absorbed in his service and is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it's actually minimized. He hardly feels the pain. The more we absorb ourselves in, you know, Krishna's service, the more we don't relate to the body. Just like Dadichi, he was a pure devotee. Indra came to ask him for his body. He says, for his bones, so that means he had to die. And eventually he agreed. You know, at first he was actually winding them up. He said, no, I'm quite attached to my body, thank you. But then, you know, Indra sort of, then he says, oh, okay then. And, you know, he just gave up his body because it's like that. The more we're attached to the body, the more we feel pain. And the less we're attached to the body, the less we feel pain. And so, I mean, I've got a story, but it's a long story. Maybe next time. But I'll tell the story, shall I? There was, I knew, I was actually, before I joined the movement, I went on vacation and I went to this particular seaside resort and I stayed in a place and there was this old gentleman who used to go for a brisk walk every morning. He must have been in his 80s. He used to walk a couple of miles before breakfast. I thought, one day I was talking to him and I was asking him, do you do this to keep good health? And he says, well, that's part of it. He says, and then he started telling me a story. I used to be a sergeant in the army in the First World War. And my particular service was to take a platoon, a few soldiers behind enemy lines and spy on the enemy. He said, and one day we got spotted, so we had to run. And the enemy was after us. And to cut a long story short, you know, there was a big explosion behind him. They'd thrown a huge grenade or something. And he was just so focused on getting back to his own lines that he just carried on running and didn't look back. And he never felt anything. And he had to run 3 miles before he got behind his own lines. And then eventually when he got back, you know, and he started relaxing a little bit. And then, you know, he felt his leg was wet. And when he looked down, half his calf had been blown away. And that would be pretty painful. And he said, I never felt a thing. So it's like that. Absorption means we don't feel the bodily pains. The other thing, I've had personal experience of that as well sometimes. The other thing about Sita, Sita's not an ordinary jiva, but as you know, and so, you know, nobody can interfere with Krishna's devotees, and he doesn't allow anybody to interfere with his, you know, that's the point, is nobody's going to actually upset Krishna or any of his entourage unless Krishna has a plan for that. But it just doesn't happen. It's the same with Lord Brahma, you know. Those cowherd boys that Lord Brahma thought he was stealing, they weren't actually the original cowherd boys. They were Mahic cowherd boys. Krishna already took the original cowherd boys and they were playing somewhere else. So it's, you know, otherwise it means that if we're in the spiritual world, all of a sudden, where did they go, you know? You know, Lord Brahma's also pinched some of the devotees from the spiritual world. So you know, Ravan can't enjoy Krishna's property. He can't hurt or do anything with any of Krishna's devotees unless Krishna allows it.
Maharaj, many years ago, I heard a story about a devotee who was being beaten, attacked by robbers, and a devotee was trying to defend himself. Talking of absorption, and Srimati Radharani was telling Krishna, "Go and protect your devotee." And Krishna said, "Oh, you wait. You wait means that the devotee was trying to defend himself. And at a point, a devotee stopped defending himself. Then Krishna came through, protect him." And also there's a story for Draupadi when she was attacked by the Kauravas to try to unrope her. She was first trying to protect herself by all means. And Krishna did not do anything until she rose her hand and said, "Hey, Govinda." When she surrendered fully, then Krishna came through to supply her unlimited saris. So we're talking of absorption. So when does that mean that Krishna only come through to give us protection under any circumstances that we may find ourselves in difficulty? If we don't fix our mind on Krishna, if we don't fully give ourselves to Krishna, if we don't fully depend on his mercy, he's not going to come through.
No, Krishna's dealing with everybody in a, what's that word? In a specific way. Everybody's different, and everybody needs different way of being dealt with in order to come to the point of perfection. So, Krishna, it's not that we can guarantee that if I fully say if I'm in a position where I am actually fully surrendered to Krishna, he doesn't have to do anything. It's up to him. He didn't have to supply all that material. But the devotee is thinking that, Krishna's in charge, and if the faith is so strong, let whatever Krishna wants to be. And it may be that he may not do what we want him to do. And on the other hand, it may be that Krishna wants us to actually fight and not actually just, to do something and not just rely on him. So this requires a little bit of intelligence. It's not that, we can actually put Krishna in a box and say, if we do this, Krishna will do this. And if we do this, Krishna will do that. And if we do that, he won't do that. He can do what he wants. A devotee who's completely ascended, he'll do whatever. He'll just accept whatever Krishna sends. And, but, as far as we go, we should try and protect this body. We shouldn't put ourselves into a position where we're actually unduly putting this body into a difficult situation. This body is sent by Krishna to help us become self-realized, so we should, treat it very nicely and look after it.
Well, thank you so much, Maharaj, and Govinda Prabhu, for your questions. Devotees, we thank you. Madhuvan Prabhu, nice question. And Anadi Nidanam. Anandinidam Prabhu's question, whereby I said that I had read about Sannyasin and Goswaminis. I will look into that. And like I said, I will look into that. And if I find it, I will share with the devotees. But as it stands now, it is obvious that we read from Srila Prabhupada that scripturally women are not encouraged or allowed to take sannyas. So that is what we have at hand at the moment, just like Maharaj said. So I just wanted to remind devotees of that. And Maharaj, you quoted a very important verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think Canto 10, chapter 14. The Tatate Nu Kampam. So I found something online from Srila Prabhupada. It's a lecture by Srila Prabhupada, which I think will help elucidate the question Govinda Prabhu asked and the answer you gave. Here we go. This is a lecture by Srila Prabhupada from a lecture on Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9, text number 1 in Mayapur. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada lecture, I should say, Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, excuse me, if he is pleased upon somebody, nobody can annihilate him. Similarly, if he is angry upon somebody, nobody can protect him. There is a Bengali Payara Rake Krishna Marake, Mare Krishna Rakeke. If Krishna wants to kill somebody, Krishna does not kill. Neither the living entity is ever killed. Just like Father, if he chastises his son, it is not chastisement, it is favor. The devotees can understand that even sometimes we meet very reverse condition of life, it is also favor. Tat te nukampam su sami kshamanaha. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-8. Anyone who can see that this unfavorable condition of life is also another favor of Krishna. Tat te nukampam su samiksha manaha. Even if there is some suffering, it is not given by Krishna. I am suffering on account of my past misdeeds, and Krishna is so kind that I would have suffered many 100,000 times more than the present suffering. But Krishna is adjusting the whole thing by little suffering. This is the vision of a devotee. Tat te nu kampam su samiksha mano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam. Atma kritam vipakam. A devotee never accuses Krishna that, Krishna, I'm serving you so nicely and you are giving me so much suffering. No, this is not a devotee's view. Devotee will take that this so-called suffering is also Krishna's favor. Tat te nu kampam su samiksha manaha. So those who are going forward with Krishna consciousness, they should not be, a debtor to any condition of life. So I shared this with the devotees so that we may understand that, yes, being a devotee does not mean that we may not face suffering, but even when we do, we try to see it as a favor of Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
What's the test again? What's the test again in Bhagavatam?
It's Bhagavatam 791. It's a lecture. It's a lecture Prabhupada gave. Canto 7, chapter 9, text number 1 in Mayapur.
All right.
1970.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
1970.
1970. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we lost Maharaj. His internet was very fluctuating. We lost Maharaj. He might be able to come back, we'll see. Anadi Nidanam Prabhu, please you may unmute.
Well, yeah, Sadhu Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So based on what Govinda Prabhu's question, I think that answered your one of your questions you asked number of times. That you feel that pure devotees they suffer. I hope if
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that answers your question, right?
Yeah.
Because several times you may mention that you feel that even the pure devotees they suffer.
Yeah.
So I think that answered your question. And based on the purport that you read right now, can we then say that even if one become a pure devotee, he still have some karma to pay based on the purport that we just read?
The purport we just read, it is, the Prabhupada is saying that the devotee should see things in that perspective. But as soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, of course, when we say devotee, like a pure devotee of the Lord, there is no karmic reaction for that particular individual. But that individual still feels that whatever suffering is going through as a result is as a result of his past karmic reactions, even though he does not have karmic reactions. He does not have past karmic reactions anymore. The Lord has wiped everything away. But the devotee, as a matter of humility, thinks and feels that way.
Okay. Thank
And
you. Even though
also another Prabhu.
Okay.
Also, it is said
Albo, are
that
we still online?
Yes. So, Govinda Prabhu, you may go ahead, and then it's almost 2 hours, so we'll bring this to a close. But Govinda Prabhu, go ahead.
yeah, like Sadi Prabhu just shared that a pure devotee does not have any karmic reaction to pay, because the Lord burns off all his past karma. And that's why he's a pure devotee. He's pure. Clear, he's pure. So he doesn't have any taint of any negativity that will give him any reaction. But once he accepts disciples, then he pays the karma on behalf of the disciple that he has accepted. And so a pure devotee may go through some difficulties, not because of his karma, but because of the misdoings of his disciples. And so a disciple don't want your guru to suffer or go through any pain, any difficulty. Then you should stay straight. You do the right thing, following the principles and chanting our rounds, and try to serve as much as you can. Then you really show love and affection to your spiritual master. As soon as we start breaking the principles and doing things contrary to what the guru is giving, then you actually putting suffering on your spiritual master. But otherwise, a pure devotees don't have any karma to pay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for sharing that, His Grace Govinda Prabhu. So, I think on this note, we're going to humbly request the devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to His Holiness Dayananda Swami Maharaj for his love, time, and dedication to be with us today. Even though there was quite difficulty with the internet connection, but he still managed to be with us. So please, you may all unmute. Jai. Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare Hare.
Vancha Kalpa
Vanchakapacharubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
His Holiness Dayananda Swami Maharaj ki.
Jai.